Eleanor sat in the corner of the living room, her hands folded neatly in her lap, the faint hum of the family gathering buzzing around her. The scent of roasted turkey and fresh pine from the Christmas tree filled the air, but it couldn't mask the sting of the words she'd just overheard. Her daughter-in-law, Jessica, stood by the kitchen island, her voice sharp and careless, slicing through the festive chatter. "She's just old," Jessica had said, her tone dripping with dismissal. "What does she know about ambition? She probably spent her life knitting or something." Eleanor's lips tightened, but she didn't move. At 72, she'd learned to let barbs like that settle before responding. Her eyes, sharp and hazel, drifted to the window, where snowflakes danced against the twilight. She wasn't angry, not yet. But something inside her stirred. A flicker of the fire she'd carried decades ago, when she was building something no one in this room could have imagined. The family had gathered at her son Michael's house, a sleek suburban home with polished floors and modern art on the walls. Michael, her only child, was a good man, steady, kind, but oblivious to the way Jessica's words often cut. Eleanor had raised him alone after her husband, David, passed when Michael was just 10. Those years had been hard, lean, and relentless, but they'd forged her into something unbreakable. Jessica, though, saw none of that. To her, Eleanor was a relic, a sweet old lady who belonged in a rocking chair, not at the table of ambition. As the evening wore on, Jessica's comments grew bolder. She was talking about her latest Venturia startup she was pitching to investors. Something about AI-driven fitness apps. "It's cutting edge," Jessica boasted to the cousins, her wine glass tilting in her hand. "You need vision for this kind of thing, not just money. Vision comes from youth, from hunger." She cast a glance at Eleanor, who was quietly sipping tea. "No offense, Eleanor, but your generation didn't exactly have to hustle like we do." The room went quiet for a moment, forks pausing midair. Michael shifted uncomfortably, but before he could speak, Eleanor smolled a small, deliberate curve of her lips. "No offense taken, dear," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Hustle looks different for everyone, doesn't it?" Jessica smirked, mistaking Eleanor's calm for weakness. "Sure, I guess. But tech's a young person's game. You wouldn't get it." Eleanor set her teacup down, the porcelain clinking faintly against the saucer. She could have let it go. She could have stayed silent, as she often did, letting Jessica's arrogance fill the room like smoke. But tonight, something snapped. Maybe it was the way Jessica's words echoed the doubts Eleanor had fought her whole life. Maybe it was the weight of carrying a secret she'd buried for decades. Whatever it was, Eleanor decided it was time. "You're right, Jessica," she began, her voice cutting through the hum of conversation. "I don't know much about your kind of hustle, but let me tell you about mine." The room turned to her, surprised. Michael raised an eyebrow, sensing something new in his mother's tone. Jessica leaned back, her arms crossed, expecting some quaint tale of yesteryear. Eleanor stood, her posture straight despite the years, and walked to the mantel, where an old photo of her and Michael sat. She picked it up, her fingers tracing the frame, and began to speak. 40 years ago, Eleanor wasn't Eleanor the grandmother, the widow, the quiet woman in the corner. She was Ellie, a 32-year-old single mother with a fire in her gut and a dream no one believed in. It was 1985, and the world was just waking up to the personal computer revolution. Silicon Valley was a man's world. Suits, egos, and boardrooms that didn't have space for a woman like her. But Ellie didn't care about their rules. She'd always been good with numbers, with patterns. growing up in a small Ohio town. She'd taught herself to code on a borrowed Commodore 64, staying up late after Michael was asleep, her fingers flying over the keys. By day, she worked as a secretary at a local insurance firm, enduring the patronizing smiles of men who thought she was just a typist. By night, she built something bigger, a software program that could streamline inventory management for small businesses. Something intuitive and affordable in a world where tech was still clunky and elitist. I didn't have investors, Eleanor said, her voice steady but laced with a quiet intensity. I had a typewriter, a second-hand computer, and a kid who needed new shoes every 6 months. That was my hustle. Jessica's smirk faded slightly, but she didn't interrupt. The cousins leaned in, intrigued. Eleanor's eyes locked on her daughter-in-law's, not with anger, but with a challenge. I built my first prototype in our apartment's kitchen, Eleanor continued. I'd code until 3 a.m., then get up at 6 to make Michael breakfast before school. I pitched it to local businesses, hardware stores, bakeries, auto shops. They laughed at me. A woman, selling software. But I kept going. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. One day, a stationery store owner in Cleveland gave me a chance. He used my program, and his sales doubled in 6 months. Word spread. By 1987, I had a dozen clients. By 1988, I had 50. Michael's jaw dropped slightly. Mom, you never told me this, he said, his voice soft with disbelief. Eleanor smiled faintly. You were young. I didn't want you to carry my battles. I wanted you to have your own. Jessica shifted in her seat, her confidence wavering. Okay, but that's not exactly a startup, she said, her tone defensive. That's just, like, a side hustle. Eleanor's laugh was low, almost dangerous. A side hustle. Jessica, I incorporated my company in 1989. I called it ClearPath Solutions. By 1990, I had a team of 5, working out of a rented office in Columbus. We were selling software across 3 states. I wasn't just keeping up with the boys in Silicon Valley, I was outpacing them. The room was silent now, the crackle of the fireplace the only sound. Eleanor's voice grew softer, but it carried the weight of decades. I didn't have venture capital. I didn't have connections. I had debt, grit, and a belief that I could change things. And I did. She turned to the photo in her hands, her younger self staring back, bold, fearless, alive. By 1995, ClearPath was worth $1. $2 million. I sold it that year, in cash, to a tech firm in California. I was 42 years old. Jessica's mouth opened, but no words came out. Michael stared at his mother, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and confusion. The cousins exchanged glances, their wine glasses forgotten. Eleanor set the photo back on the mantel and turned to face the room. So, Jessica, she said, her voice calm but piercing. Tell me again about hustle. Tell me what it means to be just old. The silence stretched, heavy and electric. Eleanor didn't need to say more. She'd spent a lifetime proving herself. And tonight, she'd done it again. The room felt smaller now, the air thick with unspoken questions. Jessica's face flushed, her usual poise crumbling under the weight of Eleanor's revelation. She fumbled for a response, her fingers tightening around her wine glass. I didn't know, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Why didn't you ever say anything? Eleanor's gaze softened, but only slightly. She returned to her chair, settling into it with the grace of someone who'd weathered countless storms. It wasn't about boasting. she said. It was about survival. When you've fought as hard as I have, you don't need to wave a flag to prove it. Michael leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Mom, why keep it a secret? You sold a company for over $1 million. That's huge. Eleanor's eyes drifted to the photo on the mantel, her younger self frozen in time. It wasn't a secret, Michael. It was just my past. I wanted to give you a life where you didn't have to worry about where the next meal was coming from. After I sold ClearPath, I invested the money, paid for your college, bought this house you're sitting in now. I didn't need the spotlight. The cousins, still processing, murmured among themselves. One of them, Sarah, a soft-spoken woman in her 30s, spoke up. But, Aunt Eleanor, that's incredible. You were a pioneer. Why let people like, she glanced at Jessica, then caught herself. Why let anyone underestimate you? Eleanor chuckled, a warm, throaty sound that broke the tension. Oh, Sarah, people have underestimated me my whole life. It's not about what they think. It's about what you know you're capable of. Jessica's eyes darted to the floor, her earlier bravado gone. Eleanor noticed, but didn't press. She wasn't here to humiliate her daughter-in-law, even if the temptation lingered. Instead, she leaned back, her mind drifting to the years that had shaped her. In 1989, Ellie was no longer just a mother scraping by. She was a businesswoman, though the world wasn't ready to call her that. ClearPath Solutions had started as a dream in her kitchen, but by the time she incorporated, it was a force. Her software wasn't flashy, it didn't have the polish of Silicon Valley's giants, but it worked. Small businesses loved it because it was practical, affordable, and reliable. Everything the big players weren't. But the road to success was brutal. Ellie remembered the sleepless nights, the endless pitches, the men who'd pat her on the head and say, "This is cute, sweetheart, but leave tech to the experts." She remembered the bank loans she'd fought for, the creditors who'd hounded her, the fear that one wrong move could leave her and Michael homeless. She'd shielded her son from it all, tucking him into bed with stories of adventure while she wrestled with code and contracts. One memory stood out, sharp and vivid. It was 1990, and Ellie had landed a meeting with a potential client, a chain of auto parts stores in Michigan. The owner, a gruff man named Harold, had agreed to see her, but only because a friend had vouched for her work. She'd driven 6 hours with Michael in the back seat, his coloring books and crayons scattered across the car. When she arrived, Harold barely looked at her. "I don't work with women in tech," he'd said bluntly. "It's not personal. It's just business." Ellie had smiled, the same deliberate smile she'd given Jessica tonight. "Let me show you what my software can do," she'd said. She set up her clunky laptop, walked him through the program, and by the end of the hour, Harold was signing a contract for 10 stores. That deal had been a turning point. The moment ClearPath went from a dream to a reality. Back in the present, Eleanor's voice grew quieter, her words heavy with meaning. "I didn't just build a company," she said. "I built a life. For me. For Michael. Every line of code, every pitch, every rejection, it was for something bigger than myself." Jessica shifted, her discomfort palpable. "I didn't mean to offend you," she said, her voice small. I thought you were, retired, quiet." Eleanor's eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. "Retired doesn't mean finished, Jessica. Quiet doesn't mean weak." The room fell silent again, the weight of Eleanor's story settling over everyone. Michael reached for his mother's hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm proud of you, Mom," he said. his voice thick with emotion. I just wish I'd known. Eleanor squeezed back, her heart swelling. You know now? She said softly. That's enough. But it wasn't enough, not yet. Eleanor could see the doubt still flickering in Jessica's eyes, the stubborn pride that refused to fully yield. She knew this wasn't the end of the conversation. Jessica's startup dreams, her ambition, her need to prove herself, they were all too familiar. Eleanor had been there once, young and hungry, fighting for a place in a world that didn't want to make room. As the evening wound down, the family drifted back to lighter topics: dessert, holiday plans, the kids' school projects. But Eleanor's mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about Jessica, about the fire in her daughter-in-law's eyes, and about the lessons she herself had learned over decades of struggle. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to bridge the gap between them. The next morning, the house was quieter, the festive chaos of the previous night replaced by the soft clatter of breakfast dishes. Eleanor sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee, watching the snow fall outside. Michael was upstairs, getting the kids ready for a day of sledding, while Jessica lingered in the kitchen, her movements tense as she rinsed plates. Eleanor sensed an opportunity. She'd spent the night reflecting, not on Jessica's words, but on the woman behind them. Jessica was driven, ambitious, and fiercely independent, qualities Eleanor recognized all too well. But she was also young, caught in the trap of believing youth was the only currency that mattered. Eleanor had been there once, though her battles had been different. Jessica, Eleanor said, her voice gentle but firm. Can we talk? Jessica paused, her hands still in the sink, then turned, wiping them on a dish towel. Sure, she said, her tone cautious. She sat across from Eleanor, her posture guarded. I owe you an apology, Jessica began, surprising Eleanor. I shouldn't have said what I did last night. It was thoughtless. Eleanor nodded, her expression unreadable. It was. But I'm not here to hold a grudge. I want to understand you. Jessica, you're building something, aren't you? This fitness app of yours, it means a lot to you. Jessica's eyes flickered with surprise, then softened. Yeah. It's everything. I've been working on it for 2 years, pitching to investors, trying to get it off the ground. It's hard. Harder than I thought. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice low and steady. I know that hardness. It's the kind that keeps you up at night, wondering if you're enough. But let me tell you something. You are. And you don't need to tear anyone else down to prove it. Jessica's lips parted, but she didn't speak. Eleanor continued, her words measured but laced with conviction. When I was building ClearPath, I faced doors slammed in my face. Men who thought I was out of my depth. Banks that wouldn't take me seriously. But I kept going. Not because I was young or old, but because I believed in what I was doing. Jessica looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting the dish towel. I feel like I'm running out of time. Everyone says tech is for the young, that if you don't make it by 30, you're done. Eleanor's laugh was soft, almost wistful. Oh, Jessica, I was 42 when I sold my company. Age isn't the limit, it's the fire inside you. You've got that fire. I see it. For the first time, Jessica's guard dropped, her eyes meeting Eleanor's with a mix of vulnerability and respect. How did you do it? She asked. How did you keep going when it felt impossible? Eleanor's mind drifted back to 1992, a pivotal year for ClearPath. The company was growing, but so were the challenges. She'd hired her first employees, 2 programmers, and a sales rep, all young and eager but inexperienced. The office was a cramped space above a laundromat, the hum of dryers a constant backdrop to their work. Money was tight, and competition was fierce. Bigger firms were starting to notice her, and not in a good way. They saw ClearPath as a threat, a small fish daring to swim in their pond. One incident stood out. A rival company, TechTrend, had tried to undercut her by offering a similar product at a loss, hoping to drive her out of business. Ellie had been terrified, but she didn't show it. Instead, she doubled down, improving her software, reaching out to clients personally, building loyalty through trust. She remembered one late-night call with a client in Indiana, a family-owned pharmacy chain. The owner, a woman named Margaret, had been skeptical but willing to listen. Ellie had talked her through the software, not as a sales pitch, but as a promise to make her business better. That call had saved ClearPath, securing a contract that kept them afloat. I kept going because I had to, Eleanor said, her voice pulling Jessica back to the present. Not just for me, but for Michael, for my team, for the people who believed in me. You find strength when you know others are counting on you. Jessica nodded slowly, her eyes distant. I don't have that yet, a team. People counting on me. It's just me and a couple of freelancers. I feel like I'm carrying it all alone. Eleanor reached across the table, her hand resting lightly on Jessica's. You're not alone. You have Michael, your kids, this family, and you have me, if you'll let me. Jessica's eyes widened, a flicker of hope breaking through her defenses. You'd help me. Eleanor smiled, a spark of mischief in her eyes. I might know a thing or two about startups, but you'll have to stop calling me just old first. Jessica laughed, a genuine sound that eased the tension between them. For the first time, Eleanor saw not just the ambitious young woman, but someone who could learn, grow, and maybe even become a friend. Over the next few days, the dynamic in the house shifted. Jessica was quieter, more thoughtful, her usual sharp edges softened by Eleanor's story. Eleanor, for her part, felt a weight lift. She hadn't realized how much she'd buried her past, how much it had shaped her, until she'd spoken it aloud. Sharing it with Jessica had been a risk, but it was one she didn't regret. One afternoon, as the family prepared for a neighborhood holiday party, Jessica approached Eleanor in the living room. She held a laptop, her expression a mix of determination and nervousness. Eleanor, can I show you something? She asked. Eleanor nodded, gesturing to the couch beside her. Jessica opened the laptop, pulling up a presentation for her fitness app, FitPulse. The slides were sleek, professional, but Eleanor could see the cracks overly technical jargon, a lack of focus on the user experience, and a pitch that felt more desperate than confident. It's good, Eleanor said carefully, but it's not great. Not yet. Jessica's shoulders slumped slightly, but she nodded. I know. I've been pitching it to investors, but they keep saying it's not compelling enough. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes scanning the screen. You're selling the tech, not the story. Investors don't just want numbers, they want to feel something. Tell them why this app matters, who it's for, how it changes lives. Jessica frowned, scribbling notes. I thought the tech was the point. AI-driven analytics, personalized workout plans. It's part of it, Eleanor said. But people don't buy products, they buy solutions. When I pitched ClearPath, I didn't talk about code. I talked about the small business owner who could finally sleep at night knowing their inventory was under control. Make it human. Jessica's pen paused, her eyes lighting up with understanding. Okay, I think I get it. Can you maybe look at my next pitch? Help me refine it. Eleanor smiled, a warmth spreading through her. I'd be happy to. That evening, as the family mingled at the holiday party, Eleanor found herself reflecting on her own journey. In 1993, ClearPath had hit its stride, but with growth came new challenges. Ellie had to learn how to manage a team, navigate contracts, and fend off competitors who tried to poach her clients. She remembered one particularly tough Momenta lawsuit from a rival company claiming her software infringed on their patents. It was a scare tactic, but it had cost her thousands in legal fees and sleepless nights. She'd won the case, but it had taught her a lesson. Resilience wasn't just about pushing forward. It was about adapting, learning, and trusting her instincts. She'd started mentoring her employees, sharing her knowledge, building a team that was as passionate as she was. That sense of purpose had carried ClearPath to its eventual sale, a triumph she'd never fully celebrated until now. Back at the party, Eleanor watched Jessica chatting with neighbors, her confidence returning. She saw a bit of her younger self in Jessica: the hunger, the fear, the relentless drive. But she also saw something she hadn't had: a family to lean on, a mother-in-law who'd walked the same path. As the night wound down, Michael joined Eleanor on the porch, the cold air sharp against their faces. "You're amazing, Mom," he said, his voice quiet. "I had no idea how much you did for us." Eleanor patted his arm, her heart full. "I did what I had to. Just like you're doing now. Raising your kids. Building a life." Michael smiled, but his expression turned serious. "Jessica feels bad. You know. She wants to make things right." Eleanor nodded, her gaze fixed on the snow-covered street. "She will. She's got the fire. She just needs to learn how to channel it." The following week, Eleanor and Jessica began working together in earnest. They set up shop at the kitchen table, laptops and notebooks scattered between cups of coffee and half-eaten muffins. Jessica shared her full vision for FitPulse, an app that used AI to create personalized fitness plans based on users' health data, goals, and lifestyles. Eleanor listened intently, asking questions, poking holes in assumptions, and offering insights from her own experience. "You need to simplify the user interface," Eleanor said one morning, pointing to a mock-up on Jessica's screen. "It's too cluttered. People want ease, not a puzzle." Jessica nodded, scribbling notes. "I thought more features would impress investors." "Features are great," Eleanor said, "but only if they solve a problem. Focus on the core, what makes your app different, better. Then build from there." Jessica absorbed the advice, her initial defensiveness giving way to gratitude. Eleanor's feedback was tough but fair, grounded in decades of experience. For Eleanor, it was invigorating to dive back into the world of startups, to feel the pulse of creation again. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed it. One memory from her ClearPath days kept resurfacing. In 1994, Ellie had faced a make-or-break moment. A major client, a chain of grocery stores, was considering switching to a competitor's software. Ellie had flown to their headquarters in Chicago, her stomach in knots, knowing that losing this contract could sink her company. She'd spend hours preparing, refining her pitch, anticipating every objection. In the meeting, she'd faced a room full of skeptical executives. All men, all older, all convinced they knew better. But Ellie didn't falter. She walked them through her software, showing them not just how it worked, but why it mattered, how it could save them time, money, and headaches. By the end, they'd not only renewed their contract, but expanded it to more stores. That victory had given her the confidence to push for bigger deals, eventually leading to the $1.2 million sale. Now, as she worked with Jessica, Eleanor saw the same potential. Jessica's app had promise, but it needed polish. focus, and a story that resonated. Over the next few days, they reworked the pitch deck, streamlining the message, emphasizing the human impact. Jessica practiced her delivery, her voice growing steadier with each run-through. One evening, as they wrapped up, Jessica looked at Eleanor, her expression earnest. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "I was so wrong about you. I thought you were just old." Eleanor finished, a playful glint in her eye. Jessica laughed, her cheeks flushing. "Yeah. I'm sorry. You're incredible." Eleanor waved a hand, dismissing the compliment. "I'm just someone who's been where you are. You'll get there, Jessica. I know it." As the holidays faded and January settled in, Jessica prepared for her next investor pitch. Eleanor was there every step of the way, offering advice, challenging assumptions, and sharing stories from her own battles. It wasn't just about the app Anna Maria, it was about building a bridge between two women who'd misunderstood each other for too long. One afternoon, while they worked, Jessica asked a question that caught Eleanor off guard. "Why did you sell ClearPath? You were doing so well. Why walk away?" Eleanor paused, her fingers resting on her coffee mug. It was a question she'd asked herself many times. "I sold because it was time," she said finally. "Michael was starting high school, and I wanted to be there for him. The money gave us security, a chance to build a life without fear. And honestly, I was tired. Not of the work, but of the fight. The constant need to prove myself." Jessica nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "Do you ever regret it?" Eleanor smiled faintly. "Sometimes. But then I look at Michael, at this family, and I know it was the right choice. Success isn't just about money or fame, it's about what you build with the people you love." Jessica looked down, her expression unreadable. "I want that," she said quietly. "Not just the app, but a life that means something." Eleanor reached out, her hand resting on Jessica's arm. "You're already building it. Keep going." The day of the pitch arrived, a crisp morning in early February. Jessica was nervous, her hands fidgeting as she set up her laptop in a sleek conference room downtown. Eleanor had insisted on coming, not as a mentor, but as a supporter, sitting quietly in the back. The investors, a mix of young tech bros and seasoned venture capitalists, listened as Jessica began. Her pitch was different this time. She didn't just talk about AI or analytics. She told a story. She spoke about the single mother who could use FitPulse to reclaim her health, the busy professional who needed a workout plan that fit their chaotic life, the retiree who wanted to stay active without feeling overwhelmed. Her voice was steady, passionate, human. Eleanor watched, her heart swelling with pride. When Jessica finished, the room was quiet for a moment before one of the investors, a woman in her 50s, spoke. "That was compelling," she said. "You've got something real here. Let's talk numbers." Jessica glanced at Eleanor, a small, triumphant smile breaking through her nerves. Eleanor nodded, her own smile mirroring her daughter-in-law's. It wasn't a done deal, not yet, but it was a start. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Jessica's pitch had sparked interest, and she was soon juggling calls with investors, refining her business plan, and hiring her first full-time employee. Eleanor stayed involved, offering guidance when asked, but stepping back to let Jessica take the lead. It was a delicate balance, but one they navigated with growing respect. One evening, as they sat in the living room, Jessica turned to Eleanor, her expression serious. "I've been thinking about what you said about building a life, not just a company. I want my kids to know that, to see me fighting for something meaningful." Eleanor nodded, her heart full. "They will. You're showing them every day. Jessica hesitated, then spoke again. I want to name the app's core feature after you. The Eleanor algorithm, the part that makes the plans feel personal. Human. It's because of you that I even thought about that. Eleanor's eyes widened, a lump forming in her throat. Jessica, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Jessica said, her voice soft but firm. Eleanor laughed, wiping at her eyes. Yes. Looking back, Eleanor realized how much her life had changed since that Christmas dinner. She'd spent years in the background, content to let her past fade. But Jessica's words had reignited something in her. Sharing her story hadn't just bridged the gap with her daughter-in-law. It had reminded her of her own strength, her own worth. She thought about the young Ellie, coding in her kitchen, fighting for a dream no one else believed in. That woman was still inside her, not diminished by age, but enriched by it. She'd built a company, raised a son, and now, in her own way, was helping to build something new with Jessica. By spring, FitPulse was gaining traction. Jessica secured her first round of funding, enough to hire a small team and launch a beta version of the app. Eleanor was there for the launch party, a modest event in a co-working space downtown. She stood in the back, watching Jessica shine as she demoed the app to a small crowd of supporters and early users. Michael joined her, his arm around her shoulders. You did this, Mom, he said quietly. You gave her the push she needed. Eleanor shook her head, her eyes on Jessica. No, she did this. I just reminded her what she's capable of. As the event wound down, Jessica found Eleanor, pulling her into a hug. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. Eleanor hugged her back, her heart full. You're welcome, dear. Now go change the world. Months later, Eleanor sat on her porch, a cup of tea in her hands, the warm breeze carrying the scent of blooming lilacs. She thought about her journey, from the young mother who dared to dream to the woman she was now, still learning, still growing. She thought about Jessica, about the app that was now helping people live healthier, fuller lives. And she thought about the family they'd built together, not just through blood, but through understanding, respect, and love. Eleanor had spent her life proving herself to the world, to her son, to herself. But in the end, it wasn't about proving anything. It was about living fully, fiercely, at every age. And as she sipped her tea, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold, she knew she'd done just that.